Tokyo is a city of quiet power, but behind its sleek towers and subtle luxury lies a family whose wealth shapes more than balance sheets. They don't flaunt it, but their money moves art, tech, and tradition. This is the untold story of Tokyo's richest family, and how they quietly spend billions. First, let's see how this empire was built. Before we talk about how they spend, we need to understand how they earned it. The Nakamura family, fictional in name but drawn from the paths of real dynasties like the Tsutsumis and the Yanai Empire behind Uniqlo, build their wealth through Japan's economic DNA, timing, patience, and a deep understanding of national identity. Their rise began not with tech or trend, but with land. After World War II, when Tokyo was rebuilding from ashes, the patriarch of the family didn't chase factories or fast profits. He quietly bought land where others saw rubble. By the time the city began expanding, Nakamura-owned blocks in Shinjuku and Ginza were already rising with department stores, train hubs, and office towers. In the 1980s, during Japan's economic bubble, most tycoons lost themselves in speculation. The Nakamuras didn't. They consolidated, acquiring stakes in commercial railways, retail companies, and a stake in a then little-known clothing venture, fast retailing, which would go on to launch Uniqlo. By 1995, they weren't just rich, they were infrastructural. Their influence didn't come from flashy IPOs, it came from controlling the essentials, the real estate under entire business districts. Quiet partnerships in construction, logistics, and department store chains like Seibu and Sogo. When Japan entered its lost decade, they didn't panic, they pivoted. Assets were restructured, losses were converted into long-term opportunities, and the family's private fund began investing in international markets. New York, Singapore, Sydney. They weren't chasing trends, they were buying stability. Their real strength came from how they blended presence with silence. You won't find a Nakamura on social media or doing press tours, but you'll find their name buried inside board minutes of companies that shape the daily rhythm of Tokyo. Transport schedules, utility policies, even stadium projects. When the global financial crash of 2008 hit, they bought. When COVID-19 shut down Tokyo, they were already shifting retail portfolios into warehousing and e-commerce logistics. Every crisis was a recalibration, and with every decade, the Nakamura family didn't just stay wealthy, they grew more invisible, more ingrained. They didn't just survive Japan's economic waves, they learned how to shape them. And now, with billions sitting behind doors few can knock on, we can begin to explore how this quiet empire actually spends its fortune. Not loudly, not carelessly, but with a discipline only possible when wealth isn't new and legacy is everything. Now, let's explore where their money sits. Literally. They don't just live in Tokyo, they own parts of it. Not in neon signs or towering billboards, but in deeds, foundations, and shadows. The Nakamura family's wealth breeds through concrete and land, silently shaping the rhythm of the city while staying almost entirely off the radar. In Shibuya, the pulse of youth culture, Nakamura-backed real estate trusts own portions of retail buildings that house everything from startup offices to flagship apparel stores. Not with their name on the lease, but through subsidiaries with names even insiders struggle to trace. Their presence isn't advertised, it's embedded. In Marunouchi, the business district where suits outnumber tourists, they control prime office space behind mirrored glass. The companies renting them often have no idea who the true landlord is. These buildings aren't trophies, they're engines. They generate cash flow, provide equity to borrow against, and quietly increase in value with every redevelopment project funded by the city. Ginza, Tokyo's polished luxury quarter, tells another side of the story. Nakamura real estate is tucked between Chanel and Mikimoto, a multi-floor gallery disguised as a design studio. A restaurant with a Michelin-starred chef and no reservation system because it only serves invited guests. These aren't assets, they're signals, placed strategically where Tokyo's elite walk, to say we are here, but we won't wave. Their residential holdings are even more discreet. In Minato Ward, where embassies meet high walls and black sedans, Nakamura homes blend into the silence. You won't find them listed, they're hidden behind companies registered in Kyoto or Sapporo. Security is subtle, off-site monitoring, biometric locks, vehicles rotated weekly. Not because they're afraid, but because they know power makes you a target, even in a city that respects privacy. They also hold land that doesn't make headlines but carries deep symbolic weight. Traditional ryokans in Kyoto, centuries-old plots near shrines, temple-adjacent forest properties passed down for generations. These are never sold, they're not investments, they're anchors. They say, we were here before the skyline and will still be here when it changes again. While new billionaires race to own skyscrapers or launch branded towers, the Nakamuras quietly expand their footprint through layered acquisitions. Shell firms, silent partnerships, inheritance trusts. Methods designed not just to buy property, but to make ownership nearly invisible. Tokyo moves fast, it reinvents itself constantly. But if you follow the foundations, the actual ground beneath the movement, you'll find the Nakamura family there, holding it steady, always just out of view. Because for them, land isn't about showing off, it's about staying in control long after the skyline changes. From stone to soul, this family invests in beauty too. Money isn't just in banks, sometimes it hangs on walls or is hidden in vaults. For the Nakamura family, wealth isn't measured by what the world sees. It's measured by what the world can't. A centuries-old kimono preserved in perfect silk, a scroll signed by Hakusai himself, a Hiroshi Sugimoto photograph stored in climate-controlled silence. The Nakamura art collection doesn't sit in public view, it lives in a private museum house beneath a Kyoto-style villa. Rarely open to the public and accessible only to a handful of curators, scholars, and collectors. From stone to soul, this family invests in beauty too. Money isn't just in banks, sometimes it hangs on walls or is hidden in vaults. For the Nakamura family, wealth isn't measured by what the world sees. It's measured by what the world can't. A centuries-old kimono preserved in perfect silk, a scroll signed by Hakusai himself, a Hiroshi Sugimoto photograph stored in climate-controlled silence. The Nakamura art collection doesn't sit in public view, it lives in a private museum house beneath a Kyoto-style villa. Rarely open to the public and accessible only to a handful of curators, scholars, and collectors. It's a blend of the modern and the mythic. One hallway holds minimalist installations by Rei Naito, the next an Edo period folding screen depicting Kyoto's imperial court in painstaking gold detail. In a soundproof side chamber, a rare Yayoi Kusama original is stored not for display, but for preservation. The room tuned specifically to protect the paint. The family funds cultural institutions too, but always quietly. The Tokyo National Museum, the Kyoto University of Art and Design, even the National Bunraku Theater in Osaka have all received anonymous grants routed through foundations with no public-facing connection. One official said, their name's not on the donor wall, but without them, the roof doesn't stay up. Within their own homes, art isn't decoration, it's ritual. Tatami rooms are designed around ancient tea ceremony principles. Some spaces haven't changed in 60 years, and others are replicas of rooms that existed in Meiji-era Tokyo, reconstructed from old sketches and family journals. One such room is rumored to house a 15th century tea bowl, valued not by market price, but by the family's belief it once served an emperor. But perhaps the most telling sign of their reach lies not in galleries, but in silence. The Nakamuras are regular players in off-market private sales, transactions that never hit Sotheby's or Christie's, negotiated in coded emails between Tokyo, Paris, and Geneva. When a rare Gutai painting went missing from the public record in 2016, insiders whispered it had entered the Nakamura vaults via a broker based in Zurich. No press release, no showcase, just disappearance into quiet ownership. This isn't trophy collecting, it's continuity. The Nakamuras don't treat art as luxury, they treat it as lineage. Each piece isn't just a possession, it's a piece of memory, curated not to impress but to protect. While others acquire for prestige, they collect to preserve. Because in their world, legacy isn't loud, it's archived. And beauty isn't meant to be flaunted, it's meant to last. Now, let's step into the future, because their money already has. While grounded in tradition, their wealth is wired for what's next. The Nakamura family doesn't chase trends, they seed them. They don't need to change, they place long bets on what the world will need before the world knows it. In the world of fashion, they're not behind magazine covers, but they're behind the scenes. Early backers of Japanese streetwear labels like Undercover and Sakai, their capital helped bring these niche brands from Harajuku backrooms to Paris Fashion Week. One family-owned fund quietly supported a fashion tech startup that creates AI-generated clothing concepts now licensed by major apparel giants. This isn't couture for vanity, it's infrastructure for the industry. But the family's true engine is tech. They were among the silent investors behind SoftBank's first Vision Fund. Not through flashy announcement, but through a venture arm registered under a holding company in Hong Kong. While global eyes focused on unicorns like WeWork and Uber, the Nakamuras were focused on a robotics firm in Osaka that builds automated warehouse systems, boring, quiet, and now indispensable to Japan's e-commerce surge. Their name is never listed, but their reach touches cutting-edge startups working in clean hydrogen energy, vertical farming systems, and generative AI engines designed for predictive logistics. They have equity in firms that supply parts to Tokyo's next generation of autonomous trains. And one of their family-run entities co-funded the launch of a quantum computing research partnership between the University of Tokyo and a European lab. Even their philanthropy crosses into innovation. One of their largest donations wasn't to a museum or a shrine, it was to a design lab at Tokyo University, specializing in human-centered tech. The lab's mission? To make machines feel more like companions and less like tools. The Nakamuras don't just want to fund the future, they want to shape how it feels. They aren't building for headlines, they're building for continuity. While others invest to exit, they invest to evolve. When Tokyo's skyline changes, they already hold the blueprints. When Japan's workforce shrinks, they've already bet on the automation to fill the gap. While the rest of the market asks what now, they've already answered what next. There's no press release when they fund a sensor startup in Hokkaido. No ribbon cutting when a Nakamura-backed drone firm gets a military contract. That's not their language, their message is buried in patents, not parties, in R&D budgets, not speeches. They move with quiet precision, blending heritage with circuitry, minimalism with machine, while others spend to be seen, they spend to stay ahead. Because in the Nakamura worldview, tradition doesn't fear technology, it guides it. And their billions aren't chasing the future, they're quietly building it. But it's not all personal, some of it gives back. They don't make speeches, they make systems. The Nakamura family's philanthropy isn't announced at galas or tweeted from foundations, it flows through back channels. It grants with no names attached to places where silence is the only reward. After the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, billions in aid poured into northern Japan. Among them was a single anonymous donation of 3 billion yuan to rebuild schools, housing, and mobile medical units. Years later, a regional official quietly confirmed it came from a private Tokyo family. The Nakamuras never confirmed it, but those who know. Their giving isn't about brand, it's about balance. Education is a constant target. Entire wings of prestigious schools in Tokyo and Osaka are quietly funded through shells foundations with no corporate affiliations. These aren't vanity buildings, they're labs, libraries, and language centers built for scale, not spectacle. One university in Kyoto received funding for a new clean energy engineering department. The plaque outside simply reads, "Donated by Friends of the Future." In politics, they have no party, but their influence hums beneath the surface. Economic advisory panels regularly consult with Nakamura-linked economists and analysts. Not directly, the family doesn't attend, but their research does. Policy isn't shaped by public debate alone, it's shaped by data, by influence, and by old relationships built over quite decades. The kind that can shift a tax incentive here or greenlight a conservation grant there. Their funding extends to medicine too. One Tokyo hospital's advanced pediatric wing was paid for in full by a Nakamura trust. The family declined naming rights. Instead, the money was used to expand remote rural care in aging prefectures, often ignored by central development. But their most enduring impact may be cultural. In Kyoto and Nara, where Japan's soul still lives in wooden beams and lacquered screens, the Nakamuras have funded dozens of restoration projects. Not to display, not to claim, to protect. A forgotten shrine, its roof near collapse was rebuilt using traditional carpentry methods nearly lost to time. A national treasure scroll faded from acid exposure was sent to a restoration lab in Switzerland, under Nakamura protection. There was no coverage, no credit. Their philosophy is simple: give like a gardener, nurture quietly, harvest nothing. The point isn't a recognition, it's preservation. The family sees their wealth not as an end, but a responsibility. Not to lead, but to enable. To fund without fame. To influence without presence. To keep Japan's spirit intact, whether through education, health, environment, or heritage, without ever stepping onto a stage. While others build legacies in concrete and headlines, the Nakamuras build theirs in trust. They don't change Japan loudly, they preserve it carefully. Because real power doesn't always shout, sometimes it rebuilds a roof and walks away before anyone notices who fixed it. What's life really like for a billionaire in Tokyo? They walk among the crowd, but never with it. The Nakamura family's presence is like fog. Always there, never solid, and impossible to capture. They've mastered the art of living publicly invisible, a daily routine that blends power with silence. Their children don't attend flashy international schools in Tokyo. Instead, they're sent abroad early, quietly enrolled at boarding schools in Switzerland or England, where last names are noted but not flaunted. A Nakamura heir studied at the University of Chicago under an alias, sharing dorm halls with classmates who never knew they were speaking to someone whose family owned real estates the size of districts back home. Their homes are tucked away behind bland walls in Minato and Denenchufu. There's no security patrol with earpieces, only gardeners who are ex-military, chefs trained in defense etiquette, and drivers who speak more languages than they let on. Every gesture is intentional. Formality is protection. The silence around them is rehearsed. The next generation isn't louder, it's smarter, more adaptive. They're not trying to escape legacy, they're rewriting it to last. Because in this family, inheritance is not about riches, it's about relevance, and relevance is always earned. If you had billions like Tokyo's richest family, would you stay private or go public? Leave your thoughts in the comments.